Basic psychology. The origins of psychology. Have you heard about the origins of psychology?
Yes, I have. Wilhelm Wundt is credited as being the first psychologist, right?
That's correct. He created the first psychological laboratory in Germany in 1875, which led towards the acceptance of psychology as a science within its own right.
I read that he founded the Institute of Experimental Psychology with Gustav Fechner in 1879. What was his approach to psychology?
Wundt wished to study the structure of the human mind and believed this could be achieved by breaking down behaviors such as perception and sensation into their basic elements. His approach was known as structuralism, and the technique he used became known as introspection, which is Latin for looking into.
What is introspection, and how did Wundt use it?
Wundt trained participants to become self-aware enough to observe and report back their inner mental processes and emotional states within experiments when subjected to stimuli such as pictures or auditory tones, and then describe what they experienced. This information was then used to generate general theories about perception and mental processes and gain insight into their workings.
Did introspection have any drawbacks?
Yes, introspection was found to be inaccurate. It relied on responses that could not be observed, nor was it possible to use it effectively to formulate theories on memory or perception. Introspection was also difficult to replicate between participants, highlighting its unreliability when compared to behaviorist explanations such as classical and operant conditioning, which could be replicated.
That's interesting to know. Why was introspection not appropriate in understanding all behavior from people?
Introspection was only suited for people who were able to show an ability to have self-awareness, so it was not appropriate in understanding all behavior from people. In addition, it did not uncover unconscious attitudes or bias people may hold, which influence behavior and choices people make as they were unaware of them. For these reasons, it was found to be inaccurate. The emergence of psychology as a science.
Do psychology have to adopt scientific methods to be accepted as a science?
Yes, psychology relies on empiricism, which gathers knowledge from observation and experience.
That's interesting. What is the scientific method used in psychology?
The scientific method uses investigative methods that are objective, systematic, and replicable. This means researchers don't let their bias or preconceived ideas influence their collection and recording of data.
What are the strengths of using the scientific method in psychology?
The scientific method allows for the replication and verification of research, which tests the reliability of findings and theories into human behavior. It also helps establish cause and effect relationships through empirical and replicable research.
What are the weaknesses of using the scientific method in psychology?
Psychology is the most inferential of all natural sciences, making direct cause and effect relationships harder to establish between data observations and theories. Additionally, not all behavior or the workings of the mind can be explored or explained by psychological research and the scientific method.
That makes sense. Can the scientific method be used to predict behavior?
Predicting behavior becomes impossible as the scientific method itself may be inappropriate within psychology. Controlled environments may be contrived to natural settings, which would tell us little about how people behave outside the laboratory settings. The Behaviourist Approach. Have you heard of the Behaviourist Approach?
Yes, I have. It's a theory that explains human behavior through conditioning and learning through experience.
That's right. There are two types of conditioning that explain human behavior. Can you name them?
Sure. The two types of conditioning are classical conditioning and operant conditioning.
Great job. Classical conditioning occurs through learning by association. Do you know who originated the theory of classical conditioning?
Yes, Pavlov, 1927, originated the theory of classical conditioning through his experiments with dogs.
That's correct. In Pavlov's experiments, a behavioral response is learned when it becomes associated between a previously neutral stimulus and a reflex response. Can you give an example?
Sure. In Pavlov's experiments, the natural stimulus was food given to the dog, which produced the unconditioned response of salivating. By introducing a neutral stimulus of a bell which is rang shortly before this food is given, after many pairings of the two, the bell is able to produce the same response of salivation without the food. The bell is now known as a conditioned stimulus, and the response of salivation is known as the conditioned response.
Very good. Pavlov found that the conditioned response was not permanent and over time, if no food is given, the conditioned response of saliva will eventually cease to occur. What is this called?
This is called extinction. When the conditioned stimulus and unconditioned stimuli are paired once again, the link between the two and the conditioned response is re-established faster than initially made.
That's right. Pavlov also found that animals will produce the conditioned response to other stimuli which may appear similar to the conditioned stimulus. This is called what?
This is called generalization. It means that the conditioned response can occur in response to stimuli that are similar to the conditioned stimulus.
Classical conditioning evaluation. Have you heard about classical conditioning as an explanation for learning?
Yes, I have. It's a behaviorist approach that assumes all behavior is learned.
That's right. One of the strengths of classical conditioning is that it can simply be unlearned, leading to real-world applications such as sleep training in babies and obedience training in dogs.
Classical conditioning has also led to the development of therapies that eliminate or reduce phobias through systematic desensitization.
That's interesting. But I've heard that classical conditioning is criticized for being dehumanizing and mechanistic.
Yes, that's true. The theory is too reductionist and does not account for free will and conscious thought.
Also, classical conditioning cannot fully explain nor treat all disorders such as schizophrenia, which has been linked to biological causes.
That's correct. The approach is deterministic and may only treat the symptoms rather than the true underlying cause.
Another weakness is that classical conditioning has mainly been tested only in animal studies, which may not generalize over to humans.
That's right. Laboratory experiments involving humans are usually contrived in nature and may not explain everyday learning for us.